Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 18. And your eyes do not deceive you. I have actually made a Tuesday show. So there we go. Tonight, we are, of course, talking about Preparation H, aka raid preparation. And there is a lot to discuss. I know there's been some changes today with some good and bad feedback on them already. I'm sure the forum's been blowing up. Haven't even looked at the forums, but thankfully, we have a wonderful panel of admins here that have already crunched the numbers and are running over some stats. So I think we're going to go into a detailed discussion, not only about the change to the monoliths and the monolith more, but also about the changes to the charged armors. So there's going to be a fair discussion on it tonight. It may be a bit long-winded, but we will try and keep it civil. So without further ado, I will lead you into the wonderful TSM, who is going to run through the slides.
Okay, let's get up and share them, and then we'll be good to go. And good evening, everybody. So yeah, it's a contentious, I don't know if contentious is the right word, to be honest, but it's an interesting update this week. I'm not sure how many people it's going to please, but anyway, we'll go through it and we'll see how we go. So here we go, slide one then. So here's the title slide. Obviously, clearly it's the 2nd of May, 2017. Next. There's the contents for tonight. So yeah, we've got the Odyssey, it's back. Okay, that's good news. So we'll just quickly refresh that because it's a review of that one there and it's slightly adjusted. The 115 target for the FM, which is a preview of an S-type target, which is interesting. And there are some previews coming up as well, so we'll talk about those, and then we'll get into the meat part of the show tonight, which will actually speed up a little bit on. There are a lot of slides. We will basically put the slides up, but we will be basically talking about the changes, not necessarily about the slides. The slides themselves is just data. You can look at the data later, and there's a bit of tease afterwards. So here we go then. So these are the release updates, okay, which is said obviously adjustments, improvements, okay, we'll discuss that. Improvements apparently to the monolith, okay, the combat mortar over under, okay, and we'll be offering these prizes again in a new improved version of the Odyssey campaign, as it said, okay. Basically what they've done is the pies that you decide to go and get in the first raid of the last set, where they got the you got the flagship, they've basically squeezed that into the Odyssey campaign. Okay, so there's an extra round in there as well. So some people will be chuffed with that, okay, and some people will be pretty pissed, to be honest. The only sweetener, I think, is if you do happen to refit yours and you do get through this Odyssey campaign, there is a hell of a lot of tokens in there. So you can sort of like adjust it accordingly. But it's not the easiest campaign in the world to get through. Sometimes it does cost, particularly round 6. Anyway, so there you go. You can get all the bits and bobs, that sort of stuff, okay. And as it says, look, Cold War cycle. We're going to the second one. It's the preferred hull, okay. They've made it now. It's the go-to hull based with the weapon. Okay, there's the price pack. Okay, then no change on price pack 1. No change in price pack 2, as far as I can see. Price pack 3, obviously. Is actually that's also the same, to be honest. Looking at it, token VXP, yeah, that was the same as before. Yeah, okay, so there's no change there. And this is where it starts changing. Obviously, price pack 4, where it was that we were running through obviously the cycles to get each one of our monoliths, okay, and that's no problem at all. But then we go across to price pack 5 now, and obviously this is where the gridiron is in as well. And notice then obviously there's 20-day build token for the grid. Okay, and so if you've already built a grid and you're not happy with the performance of the grid, you could almost mid-raid make a massive adjustment to your gridiron. So I wouldn't necessarily listen to all the data that's out there. Maybe it may pay not to be an alpha and start your raid off, watch a few videos, that sort of stuff, and do what I always do, wait 2 hours into the raid, see what's working and make your adjustments then. That's my advice, but that's probably what I'll be doing myself. Okay, there's a stack of EXP tokens, obviously. So you can run through this quite decent, to be honest. Right, next one is, like I said, we'll move on quickly then to the Forsaken mission update. So this 115 target basically is going to be a preview of one of the equivalent to one of the S targets that's coming up in the May event. Okay, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to it. So it'll give you a bit of a hint. I don't know if anybody's actually seen it. Anybody in the panel seen it at all?
So no, it'll be released tomorrow.
Not be released just yet, okay, even though it's sort of like should be by now. But anyway, not to worry. Okay.
It'll be in the FM, yeah.
Okay. All right, next week's FM. Yeah, got you. Okay. So, well, let's first person to catch a picture of that, then thanks. We'll stick it up on the page, no problem at all. So, greater points than obviously the 112. The 112 obviously is keep having its obviously its output and damage, obviously, also the points are the same, but the way its mechanics are working have been changing as they've been adapting the target, so it fits flush with their expected output and damage returns. Okay, the 115 is going to be the same. So just because you're going to go into it on day one, don't expect it to be, you know, a walk in the park. It's going to be harder, and certainly don't expect to be able to go in there with citadels. Okay, this will be the S target of the future, so this will be a beast of a target. Just bear that in mind, okay? So don't take sits into it.
Right, I'm going to try sits into it, just to see how it works.
Well, you got to try.
I'm not until I see some videos, okay?
So much salt.
The advice I've been told is not to do it, okay?
Oh, so, just because you said it twice, I'm going to try it.
Oh, we'll crack on, mate.
Oh, bastard, look at that.
As ever, you be the alpha, I'll be the beta. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, like I said, 2 previews up and coming. Okay, so the first one we've got starting on Thursday, which is nice. Okay, then this is about obviously the targets for the arms race, obviously, which is obviously our next raid and that sort of stuff. It's open to the public. It's a 2-hour preview, that sort of stuff. You know, passwords will come up as normal. Obviously, you know, there's a first set of passwords on the hour. That's 11 a.m. Kixo time. Second set will come out at 11:05, that sort of stuff. Everybody gets free chance to get in, you know, so if you're lucky enough to get in, have a good blast, okay, then, and it will tell you what's coming up. It's going to show you the A set targets and the S targets, okay, for the May event. So,
hey, Mark,
yeah.
Will you be streaming?
I will probably, hang on, it's Thursday. Yes, I can stream that one, so I will. So if anybody that admins want to come in with me, then we can have a look at both sets of targets. Although I won't have, obviously, a set of monoliths built.
But you're going to have a shitload of coins, and if you have the blueprints, you can build them.
Yeah, exactly that. So I will build them, but I'm also going to rebuild my icebreakers whilst I'm in there as well, because I'm going to play with the armors on those, just see if we can do anything at all with them. That's my plan. So I'll split it down to 2 1-hour sections. I think. Yeah, we'll have a build knocked together and that sort of stuff, and we'll play. And then, basically, what we'll do is we'll do a bit on the icebreakers, and we'll do a little bit on obviously the flagship and the monoliths. Okay,
awesome.
Good.
Thank you.
So that's the first one. Okay. Oh, just flip back. Sorry there, Andrew. Please notice then that obviously because of that one is about targets, the bubbles will be on and half repair will be on. So that's the important road. Just bear that in mind. It's really important to understand that half repair is on or off, because people get the wrong dynamics and mechanics of their repair data and that sort of stuff. The good thing is, obviously, you can roll generally using some of the money. You can pick yourself a grease monkey. You can actually talk about real time as if you were raiding. We're getting used to doing that now. Second one starts on Monday, obviously, and this one is actually then to have a little look at the prizes. We couldn't get a picture tonight, okay, guys. They're still working on the graphics of the hull itself, okay. But basically, you'll get to play with that hull, that sort of stuff, and the mort and that sort of stuff. So it's a sloth and the torpid mort as well, okay. It's the same sort of thing yet again, okay. It's a 2-hour preview, okay. It's first come, first serve. Two chances to get in, okay. And that will be streamable by somebody, but not me, because I am away for the next 2 weeks, okay. So I disappear Friday morning. I don't get back until the end of the month. But good. So enjoy that one there. So that's on the 8th of May. Oh, it's my birthday. Right, just noticed that. Okay, cool. Right.
Also, this time, so you don't get the half repair is not on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so bubbles, obviously, this is about blowing people's bases up. So bubbles will be off, okay, and you can go and smash everybody's bases. Okay, I'm sure somebody in the panel on here will probably end up streaming, or if not, we'll have to endure somebody else's.
Someone will stream. Someone will stream for sure.
Probably do a video or something. I was doing.
Oh yeah. Stu does a good video normally. He normally tries to get out as fast as he can.
Yeah, if I can join, I'll make videos on both occasions, but I won't be streaming. I don't stream.
Okay, mate. No worries. Right. Okay. So that's the crux of the general release and that sort of stuff. So now we'll just slow a little bit down, okay? Because that was like 10 minutes of get it all done. Okay. Right. So what we're going to talk now, obviously, is we've got 12 slides, and this is all about this updates and the change and that sort of stuff. And like I said, if you're going to watch one show this year, this is probably the one that's going to be probably most important to you. Okay. There have been some serious adjustments, obviously, to the combat mortar over/under, okay, and definitely to the charge armors. Why is that so important? Well, it costs 200 million points to get those charge armors, okay, in a raid, which is a crazy amount of points. And basically, they've been ineffective. Okay, Kickside tried to fix them, and by fixing them, actually, it went completely the other way. So now they've made another adjustment, okay, and this is what they've come up with. So we are now in a position where we've been released these adjustments as of today's update. And you will notice the first thing that they don't perform as well in the standard FM targets as they had done.
Or the 112.
Or the 112. Well, the 112 is a bit of a specific target because the 112 isn't necessarily a raid-specific target, whereas the 115 is going to be. I had that confirmed with GDR as well, and basically the 112 is a testing target for various things as far as they're concerned, whereas the 115 will be almost like a raid-specific S target. The first one, in fact. You can see the old and new stats there. Okay, we'll talk about them in a minute, and basically, but there's considerable differences, and the most important things I think that we need to look about is obviously it's the buff, you know, and the buff on these ones here have jumped massively. So if you look on the left-hand side of the slide, you see there, and talk about the C1M, you'll notice that the penetrating damage reduction, which was considerably large at 37,725, okay, it's actually been reduced to 1320. Now that like sends you sort of your pitchforks and then going to the town hall and want to stab the judge. But there are some so whats to this, okay, and the so whats to this is they've actually put penetrating defense up to 18%. And the minimum penetrating damage is dropped down to 1. Okay, so there's some math involved. We'll enter Brian in a minute. Okay, flipping onto the opposite side, then the C1X. Okay, the old versus the new. Yet again, look, you can see that the explosive damage reduction there was 10k. It's now dropped down to 1678. And yet again, that's also got the explosive defenses at 18% built in as well. So some quite complex stuff. To consider the two, and basically there are some charts in a minute and that sort of stuff about that. Is that fair, guys? To start with, everybody.
Yeah.
You missed the ship and structure deflection, along with the resistance.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, and in addition, obviously there is ship and So sorry, yeah. So straight under where it says defense look on the old, it doesn't say it at all, but on the new look, you've got per plate that you put on, you've got ship deflection and structure deflection.
The other thing that, again, in my mind was very sneaky because it was not communicated openly, and it's not showing there, is the build time. So just to make it clear for everyone, the build time on these armors went from about approximately 14 hours per panel to 1 day and 11 hours per panel with R&D 30 and officer. Okay, so it's more than doubled.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, if I can, I actually want to mention an observation Ren actually made before the show started, that, you know, these armors went from a charged armor to more of like a D6 armor.
Yes.
And
so it's just like in the progression. You're right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about that quite yet, but it's a big change. I mean, it's not merely an adjustment on the stats. It's a fundamental change to what the armor is in essence. So yes.
it was a shield.
We can't say this is a nerf because it's a complete transformation as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, it's not a nerf. It's not a buff. It's a massive change in what the armor is, which means
how it works.
The way we were thinking about it, the way we're thinking about it, the way we were adjusting our builds because of it has to fundamentally change. And that to me is the biggest downside, because I mean, for people who like me have a lot of ships built with them, right? That means I have at the very least been very conservative 12 days of refits ahead of me if I want to adapt to the new armor, right, after the transformation. If for people who didn't build, all I can say is, like, I think these armors were not great before, and they look a lot better now if you build according to their new numbers.
Yeah, my concern is, is I don't know how it's going to work for people in PvE and people for PvP, because obviously a lot of people have been putting these obviously on some of their subs, for their prep fleets and that sort of stuff, and several people have been putting these in their base as well as some of their base defense fleets, because obviously they're great for obviously sorting out liberators and that sort of stuff. So there are some big, and it's going to be a case by case basis. I can't say all the different configurations that these things are now going to work. We'll work it out. Everybody, the player communities, will work it out over a period of time. Of course they will.
Right.
But
I mean,
the recommendations we put on the Kickstarter page, on our page, may have to change now based on obviously what we're seeing here. Well, they will have to change. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, and part of the thing is that this is such a fundamental change.
how long after we had gotten them for how much points? I mean, I don't know. I can see both aspects of this. I could call it a nerf. I could call it a buff. It depends on your perspective on that. But it's just, it seems odd.
Okay. Yeah, Brian, you got a point, mate.
You know, my main problem other than my 12 plus days of refit, is that it took them, I think, 7 weeks to come up with the new stats. I mean, that is a very long, sweet time to analyze and come up. I mean, had they changed that 2 weeks in, maybe 4, but not 7 weeks. I mean, I equipped that, I think, to 9 ships.
Yeah, and if you want to take them off, your icebreakers because they suck, and you want to put them on your mono fleet that you're building now, you just got whacked because the taking them off is going to now be double.
Yeah, because the build time went from 14 to a day and 11 hours. Now taking them off also takes longer, right?
Yeah, which is, it's going to kill me because I have to take them off all of my ABs to put them onto my monos. I mean, that's...
And the TLC is giving plenty of monolith tokens, which if you want to refit your monos is good, but how about my Empyreans? How about my Zalos? How about the Icebreakers? I think, honestly, we should just have gotten at least 2 free tokens for each ship we had in the shipyard, potentially affected by that.
Well, Garrison
or they could have just left the build times the same for 2 weeks and let us know ahead of time, hey, the build time's going to change in 2 weeks. Whatever you want to adjust, you got 2 weeks to do it.
Yeah, that would have really helped. I'm really annoyed that, well, that it didn't even get announced, and somebody had to figure it out to bring it up for it to get announced in the first place. But yeah, no warning. People are doing refits and finishing hulls. We could have had the opportunity to go ahead and add some more in if we wanted to.
No comment.
I as much as I've been away for a couple of weeks, and I have never really explored the charge armors a great deal. So in terms of the changes, I don't know if I can really give a valid opinion on that. But I think in terms of the refits, I mean, shouldn't Kixeye be obligated to allow every player to refit these for free? I mean, why should it come at any expense to anyone? Very good point. They gave these armors out. They made us pay 10 million a pop for them. Everyone didn't like that cost, and now they want to change it. I mean, we didn't ask them to change it. Maybe we did ask, but at the end of the day, they should have got it right first time. They can't 7 weeks later, after selling us something, say, actually, now you're going to have to pay to change it. I think that's...
Don't ask me how... look, I do icebreaker preps in the 112s, right? All I do is go in and take out the first arc missile just to make everything easier. It takes under 5 minutes to repair it, or it used to. That alone, just that one little section now takes over an hour of repair on the icebreakers.
That's because the armor has fundamentally changed, and now you have to adapt the build. And that's the problem. That's the problem.
No,
it's not just changing the armor; it's changing the specials too.
Yeah, Ren. No, I understand the why. The why is not the issue. The problem is that it changed that much, and my game was impacted.
Yeah, so was mine.
I can't do anything about it.
Brian, sorry.
Yeah. So, point one: these are basically useless in Conquerors now. Or
they could never be equipped
prep fleets. But prep fleets, they're kind of useless because they don't really provide the deflection that they would otherwise. See, also Liam's pointing out, like, nobody got these armors because they were bad, and now we're being charged because Kixeye couldn't tune the targets for the things that they gave us. Like, we're being punished because Kix can't do their job, and I literally swore at them last week, and I'm implied doing it again. The third thing is they've made these better in every situation, and that's a problem because they're going to make these required because that's how they tune their best targets. They tune them to these. The good side of that is, in theory, that if you have D5s on your stuff, that you would then be able to be at least somewhat comparable because the resistances will match and the deflections will match. You're just losing the damage type specific deflection. But that's a lot of weight on your ships. That's still a lot of time to refit these. I was thinking they would bring the D5 armors down in between, the D4 time of 8 or 12 hours and, 2 days, but they didn't do that either. So it doesn't make any sense. In theory, it's good for game balance, but it's really bad for the players who are trying to build, and they fixed it over halfway through the raid cycle. Like, our fleets are almost completely, if not entirely, locked in. and they're changing something fundamental about this raid. And now I have to not only refit the armors, but I have to swap a special out for MX3 on my monos, and I have to switch another special out for the new high yield warheads or whatever. So I don't know if I can get this all done before the raid, and they just made it that the 14 tokens from this campaign, it won't even get you a ship done. Now with these new armors.
How do you like those 3-month raid cycles now, Brian?
But
I never liked them if they're going to keep charging us this every time and keep raising it.
I'd also like to bring up the point of players at the time when we were first introduced to these armors. There was many players that crunched the numbers and just made a choice to pass them by, because at the time they weren't, although they were good, they weren't a must-have item. Whereas now I almost feel like looking at them, they look like a much more of a must-have item.
Especially if the raid's tuned to them, yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot of players
Yeah, we won't know until we see the targets. The crux will be when they fit the first.
I would wager a large amount of money that they would be tuned. The high-end targets would be tuned to these armors specifically.
Well, but back let's go back.
I mean, they're just marginally better than the D5. Like George said, they are a D6 armor, marginally better than the D5, except for that new feature of a tiny shield up front. Tiny now, right?
And a lot less weight.
Well, but no extra armor, so your tank will be dead earlier.
And no repair.
And no repair.
So the fact they're still a luxury item, okay, and the luxury of that is you pay 10 million each. You've got no weight, you've got lower weights, and you've got no repair charge, okay, and they are slightly better. So let's be absolutely honest, okay. Then they're not a must-have, but they are a luxury item. Are they? The question that's still going to remain, and we will know until we get through the raid, or at least a few hours into it. Were they worth paying to get them onto 5 different holes, 20 million, 200 million?
Yeah.
No,
that's going to be the question. Well, we won't know until we see the targets. They might tune exactly for these. I don't know.
I bet when the raid starts, they're going to be just as bad.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing. I think for players who built their ships without armor so far, or are still building their ships, I think the change is positive. The armor is better now than it was when it was released. So if you're going to equip that on your ship now, good for you, right? If you already built your ships, like I think most of the panelists here did, we built our ships and we used them in a certain way, and now that way has fundamentally changed, which is going to lead to massive refits or to our ships underperforming, just like George said about his icebreakers, from 12 minutes or 4 minutes to an hour damage. You know, even if they don't incur any repair, you are incurring more repairs. So you fundamentally have to rebuild your ship now, partially. And we didn't get any tokens or compensation for that. And it took them 7 fucking weeks to make the change. Sorry.
And I do think that the TLC as well is kind of a little bit, I don't want to say it, but it's kind of a little bit of a slap in the face to the players that do have to make the changes now, because now they have to go out and spend money or time to win tokens just to put their ships right to what kits are changing them to. And I honestly think that some kind of free token should have been given out to everyone.
Or increase the tokens that were in the TLC, because honestly, this is the same amount of tokens as last time, right? But the armor's twice as long to build.
Mm-hmm. And you got to go through an extra run to get all of the monolith tokens.
Yeah.
So like I think the of course, I mean that whole change for people who had their stuff built already is a lose-lose. I mean, you lose if you leave as is, and you lose if you change. You lose if you have to do. I don't know, man. I bet.
The thing is that there's an assumption, and I can't remember who said about it, but basically the assumption is, okay, yes, there's some tokens there, and yes, they're rerunning the TLC, and thanks very much, no problem at all. But what if you already committed your dock to building a defender hull? What if you're just rechanging your, attacking a PvP hull and that sort of stuff, and you're 6 days into that build and you've got another 6 days to go? You ain't got time.
Yeah, and how about my Imperiums? There's no tokens for Imperiums or Zealous. I
literally just started. What was it? I had a Ferox Fury hull built, legendary, sat in my dock, like since the raid that we won it, and I've not been able to do anything with it. I finally finished my icebreaker fleet, and then this update comes out, and I pull it into my dock to refit it to finally use it, and now I've got to think twice. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with my icebreakers.
Matt in the chat just brought up an actual good point, and and I hadn't actually thought about this, but in December we had that whole debacle with the cannoneer and the weapon and all that stuff, and everyone was scrambling to adjust and refit and everything on the fly during the raid and right before the raid and all that other stuff. And this change actually does the exact same thing as we had to face in December and going into January. And this time it's in the middle of a raid set.
Strategy, planning, and intelligence are basically irrelevant when you make such sweeping changes so quickly, so late in the game. It is impossible for players to plan, and that's not our fault, and that's not our problem. So you might want to get good kicks.
Yeah, it's not our problem. That's the whole thing. It's not our problem. I shouldn't pay for it.
Right, agreed. Right, but the point is, okay, as we can only deliver what we've been given to deliver. Okay, then the same as what you've seen in the forums as well. So we are delivering the fact that the armors have now basically not as they were. They're a new armor format. They're basically a version 6 of the armor format. Okay, and you need to really think about it. Now, the key point before we move on the slide is you may want to consider your specials, because that buff is now being removed. And there's penetrative defense on there, and there's explosive defense. You may want to look at one of your specials and actually put back in a defensive, penetrative and explosive defensive armor, plate as well in your specials buff. You were talking about it, Ren, weren't you, earlier on? If he's still there, that is.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So there's a particular special we need to put back in, isn't there? Is it the CM?
Yeah, the shield now is very small, very weak. I mean, it went from like 32,000 effectiveness to 1,000 and something. So you need the resistance special back in the ship. Most people were using MX3. I know, depending on the setup, some people are opting for RA3 with all X armor, or AA3 with all M armor. But anyway, any sort of combination like that, the resistance special has to go back in.
Yeah. Which is a thing I'll be testing on Thursday. I will definitely test the difference between, I'll be ripping off and putting all X armors on, and then going for the RA3, and then I'll rip off all that armor and put on M armor, and then go in, stuff, and then I'll put on, obviously, these, I don't know if you can call them charge armors anymore, because the charge is so freaking low, but
which is another great point. I mean, I already have people on the page asking for, how does that change your build? What's the new build? What's the new build and the new setup? We will test that on the preview on Thursday, so hold your horses.
Which unfortunately is going to mean hold doing your refits for a couple of days.
For 2 more days, yes.
I'm not advising crap fits and crap builds. Sorry, just not.
But here's the thing. I mean, perhaps my D5X gridiron monolith will still work well, and I won't refit it after all, right? And that's actually going to end up saving me 6 days of refits, just on the 3 pieces of armor, if I have a chance to test on the preview.
The other piece of this puzzle, with respect to some of the points that were made before, is what about the people that are hosed and are locked into a 14-day, gridiron, or maybe not the gridiron because of the tokens, but they're locked into another 14-day build and can't cancel it halfway through to now refit before the raid.
Well, even that's that gridiron you're saying, that's assuming they can get all the way through that they can get all the way through.
Token.
Yeah, exactly that.
No, again, I mean that change should have been made at least 2 weeks ago,
or at least communicated so you could plan.
Yeah,
it's a difficult change to do just before the raid, a week before the raid.
Hey, you know what? Maybe they should have done that after the raid for the last cycle. I don't know. I mean, maybe I honestly, with 1 week for a raid, that's crap.
Okay. Well, we're getting used to this time of the year, because it was the same in the January raids with the cannoneers and then the different weapons and all that sort of stuff. And then, this isn't the first time this sort of thing has happened. One thing I will say, look, guys, please, if you are going to put on CX, if you are going to put on AA3, if you are going to do that sort of stuff, have a look at your retrofits. It will make a massive difference. Even if you haven't got them up to R15 yet, start doing it and keep doing it through the raid. Get as much as you can, because every little bit will make a massive change to your capability of your hull. Right. Okay, so there we go. So we're only on slide 3 of 12, but there we go. So that was the main slide we want to look at. So here's the slide about the armor pool change. Obviously, the total amount of damage of the type that can be dealt with to the ship before the pool is depleted. This pool is depleted. All other damages that gets through is then mitigated, okay, by the resistance and deflection. So that's my point. That's why you've got to put the specials back on now, okay? And that is a mechanic we're going to have to think about on Tuesday on the preview, because we just don't have the yes, you can do some number crunching, that sort of stuff, but sometimes it just doesn't pay out like that because we haven't seen the target. We don't know what they're going to deliver us. Okay, next slide, Andrew. Okay, so there's damage reduction. Okay, this is just explaining what it means. So damage reduction, okay, that's the maximum amount of damage that the damage type can be reduced per projectile. Okay, we get that. Okay, and the minimum damage. So that's the amount of damage you're going to get. So if a round gets through and that sort of stuff, that's the minimum damage you're going to take. Now we know that's been cut down for this type of armor to 1. Okay, as opposed to obviously it was 25 and that sort of stuff. But don't forget the damage reduction is as quite as good as it was beforehand because, well, it's a math game now, isn't it? So just bear in mind the damage of a single projectile then is greater than the maximum damage reduction. Okay, the net result will be addressed by the standard damage calculations. So just think about you just build your normal hull, put your normal specials on that sort of stuff, and then so the normal maths will work the same as you're building what you used to build, punishers and that sort of stuff. Okay, the other thing you've got to work about is the impact of things like evade and that sort of stuff, But yet again, we'll have to try all that on Thursday. So kick size words there. It's meant to stop a boulder, but not 1,000 little pebbles. That's interesting term. Okay, don't know. We'll see.
That's not true anymore. That's not true anymore.
It's not true anymore. That was what was originally said.
It was, it was meant to, and now it's quite doing the opposite. In fact, it's. I don't know. I don't think that's a statement at all.
The issue with the main thing when the charged armor first came out, when we were all testing them against rhinos with torrents, liberators with rhinos, was that there were so many of them coming in and the min damage was stacking up, and so it ended up being on the wrong end of the spectrum. So that has somewhat changed because now that min damage has dropped down, but it's further mitigated by if the weapon that's coming in isn't less than the 1320, then you're taking whatever damage is left over anyway.
Yeah. And until we know what the and if it is incoming arc missiles that got massive amounts of splash and the splash rings. I mean, let's base it off the 112s at the moment. Okay, if you go into the arc ring of the 112 and that sort of stuff, and people are noting that obviously they've done some adjustments as they always do, and you're taking more damage in those 112s. But I've also noticed that if you charge in quickly, then it's nice that we pause on this one, actually, I have to say. It's a good place to pause. So I'll keep talking.
Saw that.
So, yes, I'm giggling to myself internally. But yeah, so if you charge forward to the 112 and then pause as soon as that arc missile stops, then that splash is going to be around you and naturally not over you unless they adjust the splash pool. So I've been making a note of that, of doing that, and I'm getting away with virtually 3 and 4 minutes damage on my 112 simply because as soon as the arc starts, I stop my ship straight away. So my flag on my tank stops instantly. I let that 112 arc missile land, and then I dart forward quickly again. And then it lets off another round, but I've already stopped. And then I'm now avoiding all that damage because the damage was massive. The splash damage was huge. But so I managed to reduce nearly sort of like 20 to 30 minutes per target just by doing that. So that's the concept I'm going to take forward into this raid. I believe the 115 is the same. I believe. All right, but that's definitely worked okay in the 112s this week.
Well, as long as one of us believes, Mark.
Well, it's worked. I've checked it and that sort of stuff. I've driven across. Like as you would try to outrun them with like a Zealous or something like that. You have to have a massively fast one, but then you risk running in obviously to the missile, the rockets one, and that sort of stuff, and then your life's over basically because you just die in an instant. But that dash forward stop and then dash forward again in two bounds basically, it does work. It definitely does. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Ren's got his picture. We've got that one in. Don't worry about it. Okay, so this is a pictorial version of it. Who wants to take this?
Robin.
There's 3 of these. Robin, do you want to do There's 3 of them, isn't
Yeah,
there?
this is. I just did a couple of quick slides to show people what the difference is and what's happening, so that they understand what the change means. So for the old charged armor, you would have the Hulk missile coming in, and we'd have the huge Captain America shield with 700k for the armor pool and 37k for the damage reduction amount. If the incoming projectile was less than 37,000, then you were only taking that minimum damage of 25. We could move to the next one. Now with the new charged armor, we still have the mother of all missiles coming in, but that shield has gotten significantly smaller. We now only have 108 in that armor pool, We now only get the damage reduction of 1320. They have changed the minimum damage for anything under 1320 to 1, and they have added the 18% penetrative, I can say that, resists or explosive, depending on which armor that you have on there. So the end result, if we could move to the next slide, is that basically missile damage is going to be reduced for the now smaller damage. So you got, let's say, 15K missile, it's going to take off 1320 off of that. The shield pool is going to be reduced by that 1320. And then this is the big change. The remaining damage coming in, because we now have that very low damage reduction, now gets run through your resist and defense. And that, as has been stated before, if you built your ship with no MX3 or you did not have any other armor on or no other resists, this is going to hurt, and hence why that fire is now really big. You're going to now start taking damage where you would not take with the original version of the armor.
I love the picture of the ship on fire, Robin. That really gives me high hopes.
I do want to point out that the pool.
Great job on the slides, by the way.
Are the pools that big? Are the bombs that big? Are they?
No, the fire is. Can we just have that every Tuesday? Just put that.
Yeah.
Up.
So see that ship there? That's everyone in the raid, and that's your boats burning.
That's just BP on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay, so if we could move on to the next one. And so what I did was the Tale of Two Zealouses. I took the trademarked Zemp tank that Ren put together, and I took off his armor, and I put on one missile armor and one explosive armor. We're talking about missile damage here. Normally, for things that were less than the 37,000, you just counted, okay, I'm going to take that 25 min damage. Now you have to figure out what you're actually going to take, because you're going to reduce the incoming damage. We've got 15K for the damage, 15K for the base armor, remembering that charged armor doesn't have armor points on itself. We take that 1320 off, and then we end up with the net result of 13,680, and then that is what gets run through your regular resists. And you'll see down towards the bottom, we see that we have the remaining damage after the 720 deflection is applied, and you'll see there that that amount is now 306. With the old armor, it would have been 25. So we're now taking an increase of damage because they have reduced the pool and they've reduced the minimum damage reduction. If you can move on to the next one, Andrew. And so how's this different? With the original charged armor, because everything pretty much came in under that 37K, unless you ran headfirst into the cold snaps, if you were running into a turret, and let's say you had 10 executioner projectiles that come in at 15K each, using the figures that we had above, the old way, we would take 10 hits at 25 minimum damage for a total of 250 damage to be repaired. With the new changes that have been put in, running through all of the resists, you're now taking 10 times 306 damage for a total of 3,060. So this is where a lot of people are already reporting that they're taking far more damage now in the raid, in targets, in the 112, not in the raid, sorry, in the FM and in the 112 targets. That's because now that pool has been lowered, so you are now going to take more damage than you normally would. And if we could move on to the next one.
And just a comment, Robin. I mean, all that calculation doesn't take into account that some shots will miss due to evade, and a lot of shots will be shot down by countermeasures, right? That's whenever a projectile actually hits your ship.
Yes, the calculations, and that's a good point, and I should have said that, I apologize. Obviously, with the charged armor, what hasn't changed is that evade still kicks in as well as anti. So if your ship would have automatically evaded the shot or hit it with the anti, that hasn't changed. These are just ones that got past that evade or anti up front.
Just to make it clear that when you circle down there 60.71 shots into ship is that's shots that hit the ship, which means they passed through countermeasures, they were not diffused by evade, and then they hit your ship, and then this happens. So it's a minority. Yeah.
Yep. And so this is the Zealous B. This is the trademark Renato Zemp Zealous. With this one, you'll see that we've got an increase in armor points. And so you'll see that there are more, it takes more shots to kill this ship, but that's related to the fact that he's running regular armor, which also adds armor points. Charged armor doesn't. But this just runs through the normal damage resist that they do when they come in, and that this hasn't changed. So when you look at some of these numbers, and if you could drop down to the next slide, and it's probably really small to see, but what we did was we sat down and we put together some turrets with some of the damage, and we showed what it would take essentially to kill the ship if the shots got through and passed through all of the evade. And so you'll see there's a slight advantage, as was said earlier, to the charged armor. It's not as skewed as it was before, but you are going to take more damage than you would have originally.
Yeah, one other comment, Rob, is if the Zalus is part of a fleet of Empyreans, then this whole table doesn't factor in the extra 10% resistance that the Zalus will get from each Empyrean aura, or the 40-50% it gets from the Prime MX ship. So actually that 86% resistance can go way up if the Zalus is covered by 4 Empyrean auras.
Yes.
Especially if one of them is the flagship.
And the examples that I put in there, and it was just to show how the damage passes through. But one of the things that, and that's a good point, because on my example, I have 1 X armor and 1 M armor. But because they are so lightweight, you can have multiples of those resists do increase. You don't get to add the minimum damage reduction if you have multiple armors, but you still get to add up the total pool so that you have that bigger armor pool, and you also get to add those additional penetrative or explosive resistance. So you could essentially have 3 or 4 of one flavor on your hull, and then use the other specials to help mitigate some of the other stuff. So all of that does add up and exponentially gets bigger. So if you're running the charged armor, you still want to have your resists as high as you possibly can to mitigate that pass-through damage.
Mm-hmm. And just another, I mean, just to make it clear, if people have that question, because somebody on the site had, you can mix the traditional D5X, D1X, D2X with the charged armor. It'll just compound. I mean, if you put a D5X and a C1X, you gain 20 deflection from each, 15% resistance from one, 18 from the other. So they just add up.
Yeah, and that makes more sense now than it did in the past, because unless we were running into the Hulk missiles that were over that 37K, it didn't really make sense to use the weight or have any additional resists in there, because it was only ever taking that minimum damage. So you know, as we said, that whole mechanic has now changed, and people need to step back and take a look at what they've got on their ships, what you know, weight wise, if they can. I've actually got to take some stuff off of my tank because to add some other stuff in, because I was just going with the straight charged armor. So take the time now to figure out, as we've said, to figure out what you think you need to change. Take a look at the previews that are going to be coming out from the preview server, and then results that people are going to start seeing in their targets. Don't just willy-nilly go out there and say, okay, I'm going to rip off all of my charged armor and put on regular armor, or I'm just going to mix these things out. You know, take the time to sit down and think about where your resists are coming from. You know, are you going to go all charged M armor and then put regular X armor on, those types of things? Just I guess what I'm saying is, just don't be hasty based on thinking that this is an instant nerf and it no longer works. It does still work. It works differently than it did before, but think about how you're going to make those changes.
Yeah, and by the way, all the slides will be available on the page after the show if folks are interested in those tables, so don't worry about it.
Good, super. Okay, Andrew, next slide, please, mate. Okay, so let's move on to the adjustments to the over-under mortar then. Okay, so as you can see then, we've got the old stats versus the new stats. There's not a huge amount specifically. The weights have stayed the same. Okay, then it's still got a splash of 17. It's still got the spread of 100. Okay, but clearly it's the damage. Okay, the damage is the thing. I mean, that's a considerable jump there. You've gone from mine's not very clear, but 9660, isn't it, something, to 11580.
This mortar is 20% cooler. It has 20% more damage.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's gone up considerably more. Okay, but there is a so what to that as well. Okay, and so like I said, these will be on the slides. We're not going to dwell on this slide. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, and then there's changes to the monolith, the basic hull itself. Now, the most important thing is this is now getting its own aura as well, which obviously produces a benefit to each of the other ones that are in there as well. I don't know if we've got a stat for that specific on the breakout slide, but basically each one of these hulls, not only have you got the wake field from obviously the flag, but you've also got the multiplicative effect from each one of these. So the more of these you've got in your fleet, the more they're going to help each other out, basically. That's it in a nutshell. So I can imagine probably everybody in the game, because we all use it, is can't wait for Huggy to do his update.
And
Because,
Mark,
yeah, go on.
another change worth mentioning in the defense section, it gained its own ship and structure deflections that it didn't have before.
Noted. Yeah, got you. I can see that. It's a bit small here for me to read it, but yeah, I see it. So you've got 200 and 500, isn't it?
200 and 500. That makes a big difference. It also gained, in the attack section, it also gained an initial buff of 50% to splash in the hull.
That's good.
So that's big. I mean, all these three numbers, the deflections and the splash change, are big.
Well, that's particularly decent because obviously we know that there's rogue ships and that rogue missile that was flying from the front to the back and that sort of stuff, and bypassing obviously your flag. That's been happening quite a lot in various different scenarios. So, or if you've gone a bit too far forward with your flag and that sort of stuff, and then obviously one of those cheeky ships comes in from the side and catches you out because you don't get back there quick enough. So, not too bad on monoliths because obviously once you speed them up, you can get them going. So, you can sort of run away a little bit, but you've still got to get them zoomed up first and get them cranked up. So, yeah, the fact that they've got the ship deflection there of 500. I'm not sure if structure deflection is ship deflection of 200, structure of 500. I don't know how good 500 is going to help you with an incoming.
They're just ready to match the Citadel.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't rely on it too much, but you're still going to have to obviously give them some assist. And we will play that on Thursday. Okay, next slide.
I've got one question. When looking at the new stats.
Yes, mate.
In the attack section, it's got damage of 0 and range of 31. What's that adding to it? Because it's not in the old.
Is that a typo? Or?
That's too small for me to read.
Probably.
Somebody probably just added a countermeasure in there. At 31's the range of a countermeasure without any buffs and no damage.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks like it. Yeah, someone's put a special on the hull and probably taken this from that inside the game as opposed to anywhere else because you wouldn't really get it from anywhere else.
Yeah,
would you?
no, that's not the ship stat block from the Intel lab. That's with some stuff on it probably.
So that's a chick's mistake.
Okay, mate. Next, if you could. Yeah. So, Stu, over to you, mate. If you're still awake.
Yeah, my bad, man. I couldn't find the mute button.
Okay, mate. Over to you,
All
bro.
right. Fix an issue where a user's previous combat information will be displayed when they are spectating a battle. Oh, is that that dodgy name thing at the top?
That's what apparently should be. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, that's friggin' awesome.
I hope so because it's been the smallest thing in the game, but the biggest annoying thing you couldn't work out.
Super annoying. Super annoying.
Oh, I like that. I'm quite happy about that. Fixed an issue where you could not move to attack certain buildings in a draconian uranium base by clicking on them.
Another good one. So that's 2 good fixes this week.
Fixed an issue where the cannon tokens were not available. Mega hole, something fixed about mega hole. Fixed an issue where users were unable to unlock repair specialists for former foundry hull.
Yes, correct.
That is super useless.
I have two other ones.
Specialists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, but 2 really good fixes there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
I love the first one. That's about time. I've been moaning about that.
And the second one. First 2 are great.
Do people still hit uranium bases?
Massively.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Easiest way to get
log
uranium,
in, Liam. You see, that's the issue. You have to log in to be able to hit them.
I haven't hit uranium bases.
How did you know about that?
I use Tidesweepers on autopilot on 75. It's just.
But you can just drive straight in, so it's quite decent. You just drive in with one of your ironclads, and then you can take out the whole drat base yourself.
Yeah, one ironclad, and you fill up uranium in like 15-minute stops.
Because you get the bonus yourself as well, so you get the whole thing from 0 to, so it's even quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll jump on, hit a couple of 200s, send it to Orange, go get my stuff, roll my cruise, and rinse, repeat.
So there are special bonus bug fixes. George, mic check.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. So
go get 'em.
what wasn't
Fortunately,
mentioned,
we
obviously.
can.
Yeah, so what wasn't mentioned, obviously, is and that's why George has just refreshed because he's done a blog about it, is the adjustments, obviously, to the venom splitter and the Drac coax. So do you want to just quickly give a few minutes on that?
Yeah, there were two bugs. Well, one of them was a bug, one was, I'm not sure. But they were changed, and they actually didn't make it to any of the release notes. But it's really actually important for some people. Well, one of them is the venom splitter with its special before was not getting its reload. And that glitch has been fixed. So now if you use the special with the venom splitter, the reload actually is correct. I don't know why it wasn't in the release notes. Yeah. The second one's the Drac coax and the hydroxide coated barrels, right? Previously, that did not work in combination because of the secondary weaponry of the CM on the Drac coax. It does work now, and it's absolutely worthless, so don't bother using it because it's just redundant. And that's what the blog was about, is just that the redundancy of the extra 2 shots is nothing compared to adding splash to it. But yeah, both of those were fixed or done or corrected, and they did not make the notes, so...
Excellent. Thanks, mate. Okay, we're going to finish off with a little bit of technical detail and that sort of stuff, and a little bit more in-depth math and that sort of stuff. So I'll hand this over to Brian. And the slide there is Gratus from Ren, because he likes that one particularly. So
It's so good.
But Brian, take it away, mate, for the last 5.
Once I see the slide update, yeah, okay. So this is the new stuff with the new numbers.
No, numbers.
Ren playing the part of the whole internet. I didn't factor in the monoliths have an extra 50% splash. I didn't factor that in. I forgot about it. Just add 8.5 to those numbers for the monoliths. It's going to be okay. People are debating the exact explosive damage bonus, whether it's what I have or 145 or 143 or whatever. I don't care. I've had people yelling at me for 2 days. Just I don't care. So in front now is the Judgment OU monolith with 3 OUs, 5 judgments. In second is the monolith with 6 OUs, the one that I'm building, and a lot of other people are probably. And third is the monolith with only judgments. And then your citadels are behind. Your Empyreans in last. Your Comedy monolith is in first, and I don't know how much of a joke that is anymore, because, as I said, the splash is actually more like 30, and you can throw on an MX3 and maybe an armor or 2. Maybe it's viable. I don't know. I don't care. I don't have time to do this crap. I've got finals coming up. But this shows through math that basically, yes, the monoliths are a lot better now. They're fantastic in terms of damage in their initial salvo and DPS. Go team!
Yeah, if I
next.
get into the preview, I'm actually going to test the comedy monolith and see how it
All
does.
right.
And I'm going to say, for people who don't like crunching numbers, I think the message, if you're going to take one thing from this table, is monoliths with any combination of OUs and judgments, be that all one mortar, all the other, or a mix, are now outpacing any combination of citadels in damage and DPS. That's the message.
Yep. And thank you, Andrew. Little Dr. No thing on the side.
You're welcome.
I haven't seen the movie, but I have quotes pulled up because that's how I do. Right. 4 monolith fields as well. It's a new assumption that I added, although I did some math not for here, but basically if you have 3 monoliths, just 3 fields, and you're not in the flagship field, your DPS is going to be comparable, sometimes a little better, sometimes a little worse, depending on the exact build, but it's going to be comparable to R5 Citadels with their flagship. So even if you didn't get the gridiron, if you're just building monos, if you can't get the gridiron in this new one, and all you have is monos and OUs, it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. Just watch the driving.
Okay, good, excellent. Right, so we've got through it, guys. Thanks very much. You found it. That's good on. Super. Thanks, mate. Okay, so Ren's basically done a little chart to look at the reload cells between the OU, and the judgment water. So Ren, do you want to have a little 2 seconds on this one, if you wouldn't mind, mate?
I didn't even know that was going to be in the show.
All over it, mate. All over it.
Okay, no, that was just my quick way of explaining why a monolith build all full of OUs will do more damage up front, because when you look up to that 0.6 second timer, it will have dropped 4 projectiles per mortar, right? So the initial punch, it's with OU, is a lot bigger than the initial punch from a fleet of all judges, because all judgment will be 6,000 and something. The other guy will be almost twice as much, right? But over time, because the judge reloads faster as it spends more time in between salvos, and that time in between is not cut down by reload bonuses. So over time, judgment builds will catch up and do more damage over time. So which one's better, you may ask? And the answer is it depends. Because if you're hitting targets, and we don't know yet, we'll see that 115, if we can kill the buildings, the turrets, in the first salvo, the first round, right, then the OUs will definitely outperform the judgments. Because the OUs might be able to just kill everything on the first round, and the judges may need the second or third round. Now, if they have so much health that it takes multiple salvos to kill things, a mix or all judgment may actually do better because it does more damage over time. That's it.
Yeah, and like I said, yet again, and I hate to have to say this because people's time counters are going down and down and down, but we aren't going to know this until we see the 115, and we are going to see obviously the S targets in this preview, because, and that's it in a nutshell. If you're slamming as OUs into this obviously target, and that first cluster doesn't disintegrate in the first volley, then there's got to come a second lot, and then maybe a third lot. And the problem is then, judgments are going to overtake and they're actually going to be better, even though they've got less instant power.
Yeah.
So it's just.
I just wanted to say, Mark, I think we're splitting hairs, right? I mean, overall, we're going to get the targets done with any combination of these two mortars. I mean, all one, all the other, a mix of them. In the end, give you a minute or two here and there if you go one way or the other, but we are splitting hairs. Go, Brian.
Yeah. People weren't sad for a while, so I had to change that. We're getting a torpedo mortar. That's one of the raid prizes.
Yeah.
That's the mortar.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that.
Be careful with that, Kicks. Please be careful. Don't make us refit again.
But it may be Conqueror only.
That's what I'm hoping. Or have
we'll know on Monday's preview, won't we?
Wouldn't.
Yeah.
We still haven't seen the heavy weapon for the imp either.
Very much so.
And not only that, but Brian's right. We'll see the torpedo mortar, and we will see the enervated explosive special. And both are being released with the Sloth, which is a Conqueror armor ship. So they're made to work well together, but we don't know. I mean, maybe it's restricted to Conquerors only.
I like the Sloths coming out, and that makes your oppressor so worthwhile, doesn't it, eh?
But it's different, right? I mean, the oppressor is part of the Rival series, and he has the Bloodthirst and everything, and the Sloth is part of the 7 Deadly Sins. Different mechanic. I know it's duplicated mortar hulls, but different mechanic.
Yep. Anyway, okay, that's it. Then we're done.
I think from now on, when Kicks release new content, they should just put in the small print in the description of the item subject to change, and then perhaps they can save themselves a lot of hassle down the line. But
I think they should put in small text at the bottom of everything. Ha 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 ha.
Don't build it. Don't build it for a couple of months, because we are probably going to change it.
I just wanted to say, people, if you're going to quit over this, I don't care. Don't post on the page, okay?
I'll delete them all.
We will snipe you with the quickness.
The thing is, guys, as much as we've gone over the changes and we've debated the changes and a lot of the changes, some of them I'm still not fully aware of. But I guess until we actually see the raid targets, until we actually see how these armors perform, how the hulls perform, we don't actually know. We don't really know right now. I mean, we can speculate, we can make informed opinions, but until we actually see the targets in the upcoming preview and how our ships are going to perform against them, right now we're kind of just guessworking. So yeah, I wouldn't fly off the handle too much. Let's just wait and see what happens and see what's coming. And on that note, yeah, great show, everyone. Thanks everyone for coming out, and thanks for that, Mark. But yeah, we'll see you. Mark's going to stream Thursday. I'll try and get into a stream and have a chat and see what he's up to, and hopefully we can know a little bit more for Saturday's show. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about. So good night, everyone, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Everyone.
Good night.